want to make this as quick as possible. I just got all this equipment just to be able to make a quick point. Because I don't really do this, but this means so much to me. So please hear me out. Right? This is addressed directly to the ringer because I love you guys, truly. So Bill Simmons, Ryan Russillo, Kevin O'Connor, the brightest amongst the. We have to create a culture where we stop disparaging people's characters and names and these young black athletes and tearing them down on a consistent basis. I don't know how much you guys understand what you're actually doing, but when you talk about black athletes, like, and this isn't like race, so don't talk about black people that, talk about white people like this isn't about race. But in 2020, when you're talking about the climate of 2020, when you talk about these young black men like LaMelo Ball and Kyrie Irving and DeMarcus Cousins, are we making these major Kobe Bryant bold assumptions about their character and who they are as people when we've never walked in their shoes? It's very hard to swallow. It becomes like, how much evidence do you really have? So if you're going to get on TV or on your podcast and say LaMelo Ball is bombing all his workouts, people don't want to deal with his father or his family, or questionable work ethic, or if you're going to list things about him, you have to know them to be true, to the point where Zach Lowe can't come on the next day and say LaMelo actually hasn't worked out. GM thinks he's the consensus number one pick. Talking about a 6'7" genius passer, maybe like shades of Penny Hardaway or things the NBA hasn't seen in a while. When we see genius passers like Luka, we get really excited, but somehow this kid with this father is not a good player and is overrated. Right now, there are athletes who are telling their own stories in 2020. JJ Redick has a podcast. Matt Barnes and Cena Jackson have a dope pod. Quentin Richardson and Darius Miles have a dope pod. And we as consumers are getting to hear athletes speak to other athletes for the first time. And the narrative has been very different from what we're hearing when we get our content from people like you, Bill Simmons, or you, Ryan Russillo. The conversation is very different when we hear the athlete tell their own story. So you can have major character judgments about a Kobe Bryant, but if he tells his story to a Quentin Richardson, he's like, look, when I came in, I was a 17-year-old kid. I couldn't go out. I couldn't go party. So I went to the gym. And that just became my lifestyle. And once I became 21, like, I didn't want to go out and go to the clubs. I wanted to work. And you guys get on TV and you go, well, Kobe got to the league. He isolated from his teammates. He didn't want to talk to them. He was an asshole to them. Like, he just doesn't sound like an asshole in that scenario. Other people sound like massholes in that scenario. And it's one thing to get to your platform and where you are. People have great respect for you. Much like the NBA has superstars and icons because it's a genre of thing. Like, no one person's better than everything. It's a genre of thing. Like, these are all like painters. Like, Michelangelo is a Michael Jordan. And you might have somebody who copies some of Michelangelo's work and puts their own spin on it. And you have a Da Vinci or a Kobe Bryant. And you might have somebody who copies their work and puts their own spin on it. And you get a LeBron James. But these are all great players. And when they tell their own stories, it's Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson sitting around talking to AI like, man, that Kobe, he was a great painter. Man, that Michael Jordan knew what to do with the canvas. Boy, man, Baron Davis was a bad boy. Paul Pierce. The way they talk about people is not like how you guys talk about people. You pit people against each other, and you try and tell people they're not worthy and they're not good enough to have the platform that they have. And who gets the right to tell someone they're not good to be on their platform? Like, you can tell Kobe he's not good, or tell your audience. And the other thing is, like, when your audience starts small, if you're working at your own website in Boston versus being sold to Spotify and being worth 300 million, and now you have a bigger audience, if your audience grows that much, like, the narrative kind of has to change, because now if you're telling them the same thing and, oh, Kobe's this and Kobe's that, like, whereas like thousands of people are hearing it, or millions, or billions. I mean, I just feel like the numbers just growing and growing about the people who are hearing what you're saying about these human beings with like families and feelings. And and then when NBA athletes or anybody in spotlight talks about mental health or depression, like, we applaud them, but at the same time, like, what are we creating? Like, what army are we raising to go attack them on Twitter, you know, and then, clap for them when they overcome mental health? It's a very harmful society that we create. And it's, who is it good for? When I was a kid, like, that's not how I consumed sports. That's not what I wanted to be a part of. I saw sports and I was like, man, that Magic Johnson, that Michael Jordan, that Penny Hardaway, that like Vince Carter, like, there are so many players that are so impactful in your knowledge or consumption of the game. Like, and you work in a place where like you have people who are so passionate about their crafts and fields. Like, you have like Sean Fantasies, who loves films, and Mallory Rubin, who loves Harry Potter's, and like can talk about her content with such passion that it elicits like tears, and like it's that touchful. Well, there are people who care about basketball as much as she cares about Harry Potter, where it elicits strong feelings and human emotions in people. Like, I want to feel something the way Sean Fantasy feels a great movie. I want to feel something the way Mallory Rubin feels a great Harry Potter book. I want to write about things the way Shea Serrano writes about the book of basketball, with passion, and like as a real fan who cares about the game, not like, I never liked that person's character, who they were as a human being. That's mean spirited. And like, you have a platform. Yes, you worked hard to get to your platform. If you're a Ryan Russillo, like, you busted your ass, you woke up, you went to radio stations. If you're a Bill Simmons, like, you grinded. Anyone who gets to wherever they get put in work. Everybody understands that. But athletes put in work too. Kobe Bryant changed his number to 24 to work out 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 20 years of his NBA career. That was his mindset. That is a great example to give to children. His results on the court, you can prepare all you want. The best poker players, if you could be at the final table every year, you are great at poker. If you're LeBron James and you can be at the final table 10 years in a row, you are great as a player. JJ Barrera might have got the best of you. Like, the Celtics might have got Kobe. Like, but he was preparing his ass off. Like, basketball's an art, it's a craft, it's about what you have in your tool bag. Kobe had all the tools. If you're on a court and you got 1,000 weapons and some of your teammates got like 5, 10, 50 weapons, like, you're gonna use your arsenal a little bit more because you have put so much work into it. Like, it's not technically being a ball hog or being this or that. It's just working on the game and like wanting to win. But when we teach children, those are the qualities that should matter. That you worked out 24 hours a day, that you thought the game to the point where you were best friends with Michael Jordans and Bill Russells and Jerry West, because you needed to pick everybody who was a master of the game. And not only that, but when you retired, you just started picking out young players who you saw something in, because it's all about, as fans, Bill Simmons sees something in Tyrell Terry right now. 20 years ago, I saw something, maybe not 20 years, but I saw something in Kevin Durant when he was at Texas that was like, do not pick Greg Oden over Kevin Durant. Possibly the same way I say, do not pick LaMelo Ball over anyone else. But we as fans, you as fans, everyone who appreciates content makes those determinations. And we watch it play out and let their story, let's not, who lives, who dies, who tells other people's story, okay? We let people tell their own, write their own story at least. We are making assumptions in telling LaMelo Ball who he is before he has ever played a game in the NBA. And it's just based off personal opinion and personal bias. Why? Like, are you there to judge content or talk to millions of viewers and tell them everything that's wrong with the people that they're looking to see accomplish something, who haven't had the chance yet? everyone's in LaMelo Ball's feed telling him he's a terrible person and he's never played a game in the NBA. The media created all of that. California basketball means so much to NBA players, and LaMelo Ball was a freshman from Chino Hills calling his shot from half court, going to championships. He clearly has a place in the history or game of basketball. Let's just watch it play out. I feel like there's a much, much better way to think about sports, and you guys are icons of the game, just like Luka Doncic is an icon of basketball. Jason Concepcion is an icon of podcasting. Chris Ryan is no different than James. He's a little different than James Harden, but Chris Ryan's no different than Ben Simmons, or like you guys are icons too in a platform, but nobody's getting on and being like, well, this week I think Jonathan Sharks performed terribly. I'm not making a podcast to do that. And you guys are like professionals to me, because I love content. I just think you could do it a better way. And it's so important that, like, you're not ESPN. They've been around for 20 years. They will never change. You guys are so dope at what you do. It's so important. Like, I will have anything. Every day I wake up and I consume Ringer content, and you guys have been therapy for years. What you do is so helpful to millions of people. But people who have been through things and love content and go to you guys for content and escape, they don't want to hear people tear down other people's characters the way they've been torn down in their life. That's a turnoff. That's not progression. That's not what the Ringer really is about or what they do. They don't trigger people into feeling torn down or less than. It shouldn't. Because mental health matters for all people. And when you have a platform that large, you can use it. You got some great content. Van Lathan, something content for everyone who needs to know about anything. Golf, anything. So many dope individuals. Okay, but you're contradictory if you're going to give certain people a platform to highlight certain issues, but when you have a platform that's larger than everyone, you're still tearing down certain communities or dragging people through the mud who are icons for their community. Certain people look up to these players, want to look up to LaMelo Ball because they grew up where he grew up, but they still also want to listen to Bill Simmons. They shouldn't be deprived of Bill Simmons. They shouldn't be deprived of Ryan Russillo just because they grew up where Kyrie Irving grew up, or they came from next door to DeMarcus Cousins. People shouldn't not be able to listen to your content because they disagree with you knowing everything a person's been through. It's the humane. I'm hype. It's the humane thing to do. So this is mainly for you, but it's also for everybody. Everybody has to see this. Sports media has to change, period. Having said that, I love all of you. I appreciate your work. Super dope content. Let's just get better. Let's just get better in 2020. All around.